Good morning, all. We are joined today by the usual suspects, myself and Mr. John Conway, and also delighted to be joined today by Peter Barclay, who is the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Sales Geek Scotland. Look at that, I got it in one.
Sounds really formal, that, doesn't it?
Aye, it does. Thanks for joining us, Peter.
No problem.
Yeah, thanks, Peter.
Hot off your biggest event in the year, I think it's safe to say, in Hampden Park.
Biggest Sales Geek event ever. 95 guys people around the world representing Sales Geek, and we compete with guys like State of Florida on events. So we had our first event in Hampden in June. We had 162. Forced to repeat it, so we did it again on Friday. So we had 210 was the official number. So,
nice.
Yeah, it was cool. It was good.
We were there. It was a brilliant day. Great buzz about the day. We'll get into that. I want to pause on that actually, but we will come back to it. So we like to start each episode off, Peter, by asking you to take us back and letting us have a bit of insight into lovely young Peter. So tell us a bit about, as we say in Scotland, where are you fae? What was the family dynamic like? Just tell us a bit about your early life.
So, where am I from? Everybody says my accent's a bit mixed up.
I probably couldn't guess it, to be honest.
I couldn't guess it as well, actually. No.
Yeah, so if I say that I spent quite a lot of my time, well, most of my life in Glasgow, quite a lot in Aberdeen.
Right, okay.
But I was born in London. I hide that quite ferociously. My dad was in the army and he was posted to London for about 18 months, at which time my mum and him decided to have 2 kids. So we were both born in London. We then moved back north. I moved back to London for about 3 years when I was about 4, and then came back to Glasgow. And then my life really started to kind of change. I came back to Glasgow, went to a state school, English kid, English speaking, mid-80s. Didn't really go down really well.
What area of Scotland did you settle into?
So, I mean, not the roughest part, but we originally went into Bearsden, so Glasgow. I've been pretty much in Glasgow since then. But I effectively went in. I was dyslexic, although it wasn't just diagnosed at the time. Colourblind, wasn't diagnosed at the time. My sister was an academic genius and I wasn't. So I just got a teacher that I hated and she hated me. 3 years of being at that school, every time I moved up a year, she came with me and it just became this battle of wills, which then transpired to me effectively being kicked out of school. I set fire to the playing fields accidentally, and that was enough for them to say goodbye. Do you remember the days we used to get magnifying glasses? Yeah, it's a nice pile of dry grass, was a great thing to set fire to. It was a bit windy. Set fire to the pile. Before I knew it, five fire engines later, an entire football pitch up in flames. But luckily my dad was a member when I played rugby down at West of Scotland, guy, and there was a guy there, John Duff, who was rector at Kelvinside at the time. Dad knew him really well. John knew me relatively well. Dad went in and Dad liked a pint, which also impacted quite a lot of my life. But he went in one Friday night and went, Richard, as my mum and dad called me, had just been kicked out of school. John turned around and said, don't worry about it. He's a great lad. Take him along to Kelmside and we'll get him in tomorrow. And I loved it. So I was privileged. My dad paid for education. But it wasn't the academic part of school I loved. I was still dyslexic. I was never diagnosed with it during school. But I was always a kid that sat at the back of the class and disrupted everybody else. Still friends with 14 guys that I went to school with. One's chief of engineering for Calmat Ferries, the other 13 are doctors. So they're all very high performing, all university, peer pressure sort of stuff. But I was a kid that was fun to be around. I got everybody into trouble, talked myself out and left a minute.
And your dad was in the army, you said?
Yeah, he was in the army. Then about 5 or 6, he then went to Stock Exchange, landed up being regional director for Clydesdale Bank in Scotland. It's quite a high-powered job, but fundamentally, in those days, he was in effectively a sales job, to be frank. But it was the old school: take customers out for lunch, take them to football, take them to rugby, drink pints with them, build relationships. In those days,
a tough life, that.
Tough. Yeah. But then he lost his job. He was made redundant when he was 50. And went from a functional alcoholic to a non-functional alcoholic, and then died 15 years later, pretty much to alcoholism. So a pretty disrupted childhood, but fundamentally, I come from my mum and dad's background, Aberdeen. My dad's side is farming. My mum was in the city, but entrepreneurial background, and just graft. Grafters are like working hard. And I enjoyed that. I was always a guy that would work a bit harder than everybody else, not academically, but in everything else, whether it was drinking or going out or working on earning money. I was out working.
And would you say you were one of the kids that maybe, looking back now, you maybe had some entrepreneurial traits?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
I mean, in my sales geek life, it's something I'm very passionate about. I think if you go into most schools, it doesn't matter where you are, that kid at the back of the class who's a bit disruptive, they're the entrepreneur, they're the innovator. They come up with mad ideas about how to get into trouble, and they seem to be able to invent ways of getting into trouble really well.
That was me over the back.
Yeah,
the
100%.
exact same. Just could not settle in school. My wife, who was in all my classes in school, was the polar opposite. She's an academic through and through. A couple of degrees nowadays. I just couldn't focus.
No.
My only focus and attention was, how can I make people laugh here, or just disrupt things in some way, shape or form? Just what I always used to just say, it just wasn't for me. I think to your point, dyslexia, you could rhyme off all of the neurodiverse challenges that people have always faced into, but just back in the day, they weren't a thing. You were just stupid. It was just like, they're the stupid, disruptive kids, sit them earlier out the way.
But I think the thing is, I think in some ways, and I get that you need to give these people the right support for whatever the diversity is, but we had to survive. You had to learn how to cope with it. I think for me, one of the things that I get really frustrated with is if you look at that dynamic and you look across the geek network, most of us are the same. We have that kind of dyslexia, disruptive, non-academic background. But that's made us build our human side of our better. The way we build rapport, the way we build relationships, the way we communicate, the way we lead, or the way we motivate people is what we've had to rely on, because we've not been able to do it by written word. And I generally think of more schools and more people, and it kind of leads on to the later part of the podcast about changing the way the world perceives sales. But, sales to me is the biggest sort of engine of business and innovation in the country or in the world, and why we aren't encouraging these kids at the back of the class to become salespeople. And I had career advisors at school, and they told me to be an accountant or a computer software person or an engineer. Now, anybody who knows me, those jobs are so far from what I can do. I'm good at maths. Hence why the engineer bit. But
so when you arrived at Kelvin side, then what age would that be then?
About 10.
About 10ish.
Yeah,
Okay.
just going into primary 7 effectively. So
Right,
just
okay.
transitioning to first year.
And did you feel that was a massive step change then from where you had been? You said it was good, but you were still kind of at the back of the class type thing. And also there's a lot of sporting things that maybe came in at that early stage.
Yeah, I mean,
changed.
it was interesting because it's one thing that, independent schools get a lot of credit, but I think there's a lot of bad in it as well. And Kelvin side was quite unique. And John, if I tell you the way that my dad and I were interviewed to get into the school, I'll show you the sort of leader he was. We literally we went along the corridor of Kelvin side. There was a little light switch, you had to press a button, it was red, green, and whatever else. It would flash green, she went in. We went in, and John literally swore, and went, thank you guys are here. Pulled out his bottom drawer, pulled out a bottle of whiskey, packet of B&H, kicked his feet in the desk, pulled my dad a whiskey. I was 10, offered me a cigarette, and we had a chat for 45 minutes. That's the way he taught. So the principles of the school was always about being school for kids and guys that had been in the military. So it's about developing, as they called in the day, young gentlemen rather than academics. We were never the best academic school. So we heavily relied on sport. We had an Army Cadet Force. We ran it as an Army school for once a day. And I was sort of second, third in charge of the cadet force when I was there. But we were teaching 600 kids how to march and how to do map reading and first aid. We were affiliated with the parachute regiment, so they would take us away to military bases and we'd shoot 4,000 rounds in an afternoon kind of thing. And it was led by us as school kids. So that taught me that leadership part, the relationship skills, which schools don't teach. They teach you how to be academically really good, but they don't prepare you for life. And I was lucky because my school prepared me for life, and it gave me a different outlet that wasn't academic.
It's very, I think now looking back, it's very like learning to drive. It's you're getting taught to pass the test, but you're not getting taught about like the taxi driver that hangs out his window and gives you the fingers and peeps his horn and calls you an arsehole when you're trying to change lane. Do you know, it's like it's almost like if there isn't an academic route, there's no other path. You know, it's like the struggle to just.
But even academic routes, and it's getting really political in the view, but I don't think schools or universities prepare people for life. They get them to pass tests. They make them academically great, but they don't prepare them. I mean, my wife's completely opposite from me. She wanted to be a journalist, landed up being a vet. So you can imagine her when she reads my English, she's red penning it all the time. But you've got a successful business, got about 20 odd employees, but she's interviewing vets now who just aren't prepared for work. And they don't teach kids how to.
Mate, it's getting softer, honestly. We'll finish in this point because I think we could get right political on this, right? But I learned recently that when a teacher is now marking a kid's jota, they're not allowed to use an X. So in years gone by, you get a tick or you get an X with a wee note that says change this. Not allowed anymore because it creates too much like stress and anxiety when they see that.
I had the exact same conversation with a guy, and he was saying that schools are not allowed to use the word no and not allowed to criticise children. Now, how the hell is that preparing you for life? Do you know what I mean? You leave university or school, you go into your first job, and the first day you'll be told no a million times, and you've never heard that word before. It's just bonkers, and it gives you no resilience, it gives you no strength, it does it. And I believe that there's been great things in my life that I've done really well, but there's been some pretty tough times as well, and I've learned more from the tough times than I have from good times. So a part of humans is going through that toughness, isn't it? It's where you build that resilience and mindset.
No, it is indeed. You're absolutely right. People are kind of shielded a lot. Kids are, and I've got two daughters. One's 21, one's 23, and that's a very, very different childhood from what I experienced as well at school and stuff like that. But it's still a good experience as well. But it's very, very, very different. But you're right about not saying no and not being negative. And I guess there is a place for that, and if that's managed correctly. But when it comes down to kind of our profession, you then have to kind of learn. If you've never experienced that before, it's a real quick learning curve, isn't it?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I've a son 8 and a daughter 3, and their education is so poles apart. I mean, I'm of the generation, I'm showing my age here, but I think Helmside was one of the last schools in Scotland that still built and cane kids. Now, when I started at age 10, our sixth forms could still belt and cane you. So we were getting caned by 17-year-old kids who, would do it for a laugh. I still got a couple of scars where I got belted. Did that do me any damage? Probably, to a degree. But then also, I think it made me learn that there's a line, and quite often I'd step over that line and get away with it, which is fine. There's a few times I stepped over the line and got caught and got punished. There's a few times I didn't step over the line and got punished. But do you know what? In the big picture, it balanced out, and I was happy with that.
Well, we'll swiftly move on for belting kids, just in case.
I had a few stories about
not belting me, so it's fine.
I'm guessing, but I don't want to guess, I guess. No after education, or did you go to college or university?
The big negative with the school was we spent an hour a week in our 5th and 6th year writing out university applications. And everybody, I think it was like 96% of kids went to university, so it was expected. Looking back on it, I wish the school had encouraged me to maybe go and get a trade. Because I think if I'd got a skill like a trade of being a joiner or a plumber or electrician, I'd have done that for a few years, then created myself a business, and I could have literally created that passion that I could have created a job for. But I went to university, and I remember clearly the night before my application I had to go in, my mum and dad phoned me and said that the school had been informed and they don't think they know what you want to do. I went on a day of applying to university and had an hour session with my careers advisor, and I literally got down to that situation of what do you want out in life, and I was like, earn money. That was it. Just earn lots of money. And because dad had lost his job and stuff, we'd come from a privileged background, but the latter years at Kelmside, it was tough. You know, we were getting a house repossessed and all that sort of stuff. So my school fees got paid more than the mortgage did. And I didn't want that for my kids. I wanted them to have a comfortable life, and I saw the root of all happiness to be money, because for me, all the arguments we'd had in the house had been through the lack of money. So therefore, if you removed that lack of money and gave it money, pleasure and happiness would come. So I sat down with my career advisor and said, I want to earn lots of money. And it was a course at what was, when I applied for a Glasgow Polytechnic, but when I actually went to Glasgow Caledonian University, which was a new degree, and it was a cross between business law and computer science.
Right, okay.
And in 1990, computers, were where money was made. And I was like, that will make me tons of money. Yeah. Spent 4.5 years of university, resat my first year twice, resat my second year twice. I got into my final year, head lecturer sat down and literally gave me an ultimatum and said, carry on as you are, fail. Study 24 hours a day between now and the exams, and you'll probably fail or take a year out. And luckily at the time, I was working in the business that I was running in Glasgow. And in 1997, I think it was, I had a company car, I had a mobile phone, I was earning 45 grand a year. And I was in good money, and I was a student, so I got the student loans and the student ID, and it was best of both worlds. So I took a year out, just never went back. But it just wasn't for me.
Wasn't it for
I got out of it. I mean, I winged my way through university for 4.5 years and got 4 years of student grants and student loans and all that sort of stuff.
Having fun and going to the union and
doing all the stuff that salespeople generally do, take people out, have fun, have a laugh. I remember playing rugby with one of the guys that I was in the village with out in Drimmen. I used to play rugby with, I won't mention his name because he's a nice guy and I don't want to slate him on this. But I remember turning up at the union the day before an exam that we were both sitting, both of us hadn't studied a bit. We bumped into each other about 9 o'clock in the university library because we were panicking and we better do some prep for this exam. By 10:30 we were in the union, drinking pints and
as it goes.
The exam was miles away from us. But
I spent half of my teens in the union in Strathclyde, and I wasn't at the university. My pals used to just sign me in, and
it's a great life if you can get away with it.
All right, and you've segued us into our next key question that we like to ask, which is what was kind of, in inverted commas, proper job number one. So it sounds like you gathered proper job number one whilst you were at uni. What was that job?
Actually at school.
Was it right? Okay.
Actually, the times were a bit tough, and if I wanted to go on holiday, if I wanted to do anything, I'd earn the money myself. So at the age of 14, I started a small landscaping grass cutting round over 2 years while I was at school. So it was great because grass cutting generally happened during the summer holidays. But I was doing maybe 18 gardens. I remember one week I was talking to my dad about money, and remember this is like 90, probably 89 actually when I started that. 1 week I made nearly £500 cutting grass. And it was, in those days, it was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
My student loan for the year was £1,000, so I'd made my entire student loan in half, a week. It was amazing. But then luck has it, I went to university. My mum worked in the local kindergarten. One of the guys in the kindergarten was a full-time pilot with Loganair, and he was starting a business and needed somebody to go and repair bikes from a Saturday afternoon. And I was like, cool, new shop, bike shop, I'll go and do that. So I joined that in 91, I think. And shortly after, Loganair went through a few problems, so he went from this lifestyle of being on call for 10 days but never actually flying to then having to get a proper job and actually fly for a living. So I ran the business for him, and he flew. He had 2 young kids when I was started there, but I had a third when I was there. 12 years later, we grew it to be a successful business. We had a couple of toy shops. We sold 10% of trampolines across all Britain online. We had a lodge park. We had a hotel. We built log cabins. We supplied football. We supplied play equipment to nursery schools and caravan parks and Rangers and Celtic. We installed play equipment for guys like Linus Henson and John Lewis. It was a successful business. But that's where I kind of got the grounding of sales. And it was great because in that business we had a toy shop. So I got that business to consumer sales because I was selling to private clients. We then had an online shop, which back in 90, whenever it was unheard of. We were one of the first sort of online trampoline shops in the UK. So I got that e-commerce element in there. And then we supplied to caravan parks and hotels and farmers, so there's a bit of B2B stuff. So it kind of gave me a real grounding of all aspects of sales. And because it was a small business, we didn't have marketing departments or HR departments or finance. We just did it all ourselves. Mm-hmm. So it kind of gave me a really good grounding to just business in general. And I loved it. And learned a hell of a lot from it. Did a hell of a lot wrong as well, but we learned by those. And then when I was about 29, my now wife, she graduated from university. She had to move to Manchester to get a job. And to be frank, I got to the stage that I wanted to see what the bigger world was. I'd been kind of protected in this business. So it gave me an excuse to leave the business as well, because the 5 businesses we had, I ran them all. So how do you then turn around to a guy who has a family who's been supported by this business that I'm going to leave? So I needed a reason to leave, and it was a great reason. So I moved to Manchester and lived there for 10 years.
Oh, did you? Right,
yeah,
okay,
so I lived in Chorley.
Right.
So yeah, lived down there.
Right, okay, nice. And so, sorry, John, you got to say something there? Aye, so you moved to Manchester. No kids at that point, I'm guessing, aye?
No.
No kids at that
got
point.
engaged a year after, I think we moved to Manchester, or I moved to Manchester.
Right, okay. And what did you move on to down in Manchester?
So, because I mentioned earlier that I had lots of mates that are doctors, I really wanted to become a medical rep.
Right, okay, aye.
Yeah, right. Lots of money, lots of entertainment, taking nurses and doctors out to restaurants every night of the week. Sounds a great life. But to get into that field, really, really stringent qualification processes, and I had sort of 4 or 5 job interviews for some of the bigger firms and really kind of big ticket jobs, and I always got to the final 2, and I was always the wild card, so I never got them. And then I just took the first job, which was selling planters and plants. So to cities and local authorities, did that, supplied all the planters to Glasgow City for the Commonwealth Games bid. Supplied cities like City of Westminster and City of London, did that for about 12 months, 9 months, something like that. But very quickly became the best salesperson in the business. I took on Scotland within 2 months with Scotland, North of England. Then it was Scotland, North of England and Ireland. Then it was Scotland, North of England, Wales and Ireland. So over the space of a year, I pretty much took over the whole country. Right. And then I got into supplying counter-terrorism planters for Scottish Parliament building.
I'm going to risk making an arse of myself here, but I don't mind doing it, right, for the simpletons in the audience like myself that might be listening. What is a planter?
So if you were down at Buchanan Street, literally the planters you see, the big planters.
The big grey plant, right, okay,
you still see them, ones with the stainless steel around them. You see Buchanan Street, I sold them.
What a crazy thing to sell. That's wild.
It was wild because it was a great business. Once again, taught me a lot. We sold or rented the planters, but we also sold the plants in them. And we sold servicing contracts to water them and do all that side of things. So
were you selling to councils primarily, I'm guessing?
Councils, town councils, villages, private businesses.
Right.
So... But like the Glasgow City contract was 500,000, I think. It was a decent sized contract.
And it's still kind of about a legacy product, because they're still there. Because I know a guy who had a steel fabrication business, and certainly in Glasgow they provide a lot of the aluminium Christmas trees and planters and stuff that is still there to this day, and that's probably 15 years since they won that first contract, did the installation, and they've got recurrent revenue in that model, because they have to then take them away, they have to go and check the lights, they have to get them polished for the next season, and it's just money every single year that comes in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can tell people this, but it was a fantastic business, because we had a nursery that we grew the plants in Derby, which was also the owner's house, and he was a bit of an entrepreneur, and in his garden or in the nursery he had built himself a racetrack, and he had 2 Ferraris, and he built himself a clay pigeon shooting trap and a fly fishing pond and all this sort of stuff. So real boys' toy stuff. And we literally used to go around to councils and say, if you spend over 100 grand with us, we'll fly you to Derby to check your plants before they get delivered, because we were growing the plants for them. So you'd literally walk around to councils and say, you're only spending 80 grand. If you spend an extra 15, we'll fly you to Derby, put you up overnight in a hotel, let you drive the Ferraris around the racetrack, have a barbecue, all that sort of stuff. I mean, it was almost brand envelope stuff, but yeah, it worked. But it really let me, it was that kind of entrepreneurial way as well. It's that what small businesses do. So I got into counterterrorism stuff. I always had the desire to get into big corporate life, to start to get into the room with smarter guys than me. So through my work on the counterterrorism project in Scottish Parliament, I landed up getting an interview for a business called Marshalls to supply structures and canopies like walkways and stuff outside airports. I remember I went to an interview with a person who I later actually made redundant, but he interviewed me for a role. And I'd gone through sort of 5 interviews for this role, and he sat me down and he said, right, I'm going to paint the bleakest picture of this role that I can possibly ever do, because the last 3 people have come in and haven't stuck it, so I want to tell you what the bad is. So he spent 3.5 hours telling me how bad it was. And I jumped into my car, and there was, I don't know if you've ever been to Southport, but it's odd, they have all these units that are at the back of people's gardens. You have to drive out this long driveway past the houses or through the houses onto the street. I'd literally got to the end of the drive, and the recruiting agency phoned me to say, you've got the job. And I was like, awesome, don't want it. So I rejected it. 10 days later, the MD of the business, the guy who had interviewed me's boss, phoned me and said, look, Pete, we heard about you, thought you'd do a really good job for us. We want you to join. We've got a different job. Do you want to come in and join the business? So I met with Keith at the time, and I went in to run a department that launched the first ever precast motorway crash barrier in the UK. So all the crash barriers you see in the UK now, I launched that back in, I don't know, 2006 or something like that. And I had 3 years of doing that, won some really good contracts, took it from doing kind of 200 grand a year to multi-millions. At the end of the 2-3 years, we set up a business called Delta Block UK, which was a joint venture between Marshalls and Delta Block. I was offered a job to run that business or stay within Marshalls, but I quite liked Marshalls. It was, at that stage, a £700 million business. I was dealing with lots of qualified university grads. I thought I could learn some stuff off. So I went into business with 4 divisions. I was national sales manager of one of the divisions. The next 3-4 years, I shut the other divisions down, was promoted to director. And yeah, so I was there for 12 years. So that gave me the corporate feel.
Aye.
So that's what I felt I had.
So, something I want to unpick there, right? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, so if you don't agree with what I'm about to say, then by all means tell me, right? But it feels like, based on that small snippet of the journey that you've been on, that you've just shared, that you've always just have a flavour for being good at sales. Like, what do you chalk that down to? Why do you think that you've always just had that in the locker?
I think the first thing you kind of have to unpick is, what is good sales? And a lot of people think good sales is just getting orders. It's not. Good sales is about getting good orders and make money, make profit. And that's what I was always good at. I was always good at looking at how to make the most money out of something. And I think that was just generally from kind of survival almost, having to go out and earn money. That you just grafted and worked hard. And to be frank, I say it all the time in my sales geek life, if somebody paid me enough money to sweep the floor, I would do it if it made me some profit. So I think for me, understanding how to sell and how to build relationships that give you opportunities to make money is really important. And I think that's the bit that in my sales geek life, we spend a lot of time speaking to business and teaching them about that sales is not just this kind of way of getting an order and then the salesman runs for the hills, because ultimately an order's not that good until you actually can get invoiced and paid for it and make as much money as is. Not as much money as you can, but as much money that's reasonable to enable you not to rip off clients. So you build that sustainable engine. So for me, it was about making money more than anything else. Obviously, sales is a critical part of that. You know yourself. You can run the leanest machine in the world, but if you don't have enough orders coming in, then what's the point?
Aye. I completely agree, mate, and I don't know whether part of the problem, I mean, you's actually touched on this at your event on Friday. There's a lot of just negative connotations, I think, around some of the stuff that you've just spoke about, so yield and profit, actually selling for a living. I don't know why, but because there is nothing on earth that exists without sales. Like, we can't sit in this podcast studio and record without Cam or Mark selling as a slot. I can't wear these clothes without somebody selling with them. But yet, even when I reflect on my own career, actually, there was prolonged periods where I was working in sales, but I used to say to people, "Oh no, I work in a contact centre," as if that's like saucier or sexier than being a sales guy.
Yeah.
I don't really know why that is, but I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts.
So I think two parts. One, I would say actually sales is a critical part for business. Of course it is. But it's actually a critical point of life. You know, if you apply for a job, you sell yourself. If you advertise for a job, you're selling your business. I have a 3-year-old and 8-year-old. I have to sell to them every morning about put your clothes on or eat your veg. And I have a wife, so if we ever get a date night, we have to choose which restaurant we want to go to. I always want to go to Chinese. She always wants to go to Indian. So you have to negotiate around which restaurant you go to. And to me, that's the fundamentals of sales, isn't it? So I think for me, it's a bigger picture. But I think, and it's really interesting, the kind of perception of sales and that negative perception, how that's been created, and also overlap that with actually what makes good sales. Good sales is understanding people's pain, understanding people's problems, and solving those pain points. Now, if you do that in a positive way, people remember you for removing their problems, therefore they love you, it becomes sustainable, they'll refer you, all that side of things. The negative is that pushy, hard salesperson who would never take no for an answer, would sell you anything they possibly could at the highest price you possibly could. And we've all had that feeling of leaving a shop or a car garage or whatever else and having that pure joy of going, I bought this car, I never thought I could afford that car. And you get that adrenaline rush and that euphoria about doing it. But then you walk out the garage and you get in your car, and about 30 seconds afterwards you think, shit, no, I can't really afford it. I don't really need it. And I've gone and spent something that I actually now don't like. And then what you do is you resent that purchase for every time you use it because you feel like you spent too much on it or it's something you don't need. So that pain that's created by that resentment, people link to sales, that word sales. And, you can go through loads of different industries that, have been hampered by that double glazing sales, PPI sales, timeshare sales, secondhand car sales. You can go through it. And it's all those industries that link sales to them we get a negative perception from. For me, it's a part of the industry, and hard sales does exist, but it's a very small part of what we do. And like every industry, you guys in lead gen, there'll be loads of people in your industry that do it badly, that overcharge, that rip people off. Happens in every part of life, doesn't it? Unfortunately, what the rest of us in the sales world did was we stopped calling ourselves salespeople rather than addressing the problem. So they started creating jobs like key account manager and business development managers and contact centers and customer service people to try to remove them from that sales rather than actually drowning the bad out the market by doing it well. And that is exactly like you, I had to say, go back to my school, I used to go to stag do's and weddings. And believe me, if you want to show how badly sales is perceived, if you go to a stag do with 13 doctors and all their doctors' friends, and they all go around and say, what do you do? And they're all saying, I'm a GP or I'm a consultant this, I'm a consultant in that. And they turn around to you and say, so what do you do for a living? And you turn around and say, I'm a salesman. You can guarantee you feel it then how bad it was. So I spent half an hour talking about my job, but intentionally not using the word sales. Trying to describe what sales was without sales, just because of that negative perception. It's crazy. Considering how important it is to life and to business.
No, you're not alone. I've been in lots of different social circumstances or occasions where you're a collective bunch of friends or family or people you don't even know, and they just don't want to mention the word sales. And I know that they do sales. But when you kind of have that discussion, no, I don't actually sell anything. I don't do sales. And they bring in a different title. Yeah, you think, oh, that's great, but and it's just there is a wee bit still embarrassment. It's horrible.
I remember in my very early geek life, I met a prospect client down in Ayrshire, and I went into this MD's boardroom. Now, this guy had built a business from, forget about numbers and the time scale, but say over 10 years, he went from 0 to 10 million revenue. just for example. And it was a multiple £1 million business. It was 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 million kind of size. And I went in there and he went, all right, okay, you're from Sales Geek. And then he said, right, before we even start the conversation, I need to explain something to you. And I was like, cool. Put instant seat. And he says, in this business, we don't sell. I was like, okay, let me just step back there for a moment and let's just take that statement. And I said, you've grown this business from 0 to 10 million in 10 years and you've never sold a product. Because if you're able to do that, I want to know how you've grown that business. Because if you've not sold anything in that 10 years and you're making £10 million of revenue out of thin air, that's a genius business. And he sat back and went, well, do you know what? Thinking about it, I suppose we do sell, but just not the way, and it was really interesting, not the way that you think that I sell. And I was like, well, you don't know how I think you sell for a start, and you don't know how I sell. So you're being very presumptuous in knowing what I do. But that's fundamentally, look at us as a society, we hate salespeople. It's bonkers.
Even in business, you see now people labelling themselves as, what is it? It's the Chief Revenue Officer. And it's fugazi, really. It's what you're talking about, isn't it? It's like trying to remove those negative connotations. I find I find the psychology of that quite interesting. And no for a minute suggesting that I've not participated in it. I absolutely have. But I think at heart you're right. It's that as a nation we hate hardened sales. We've all had that. Like me, before my wife was a teacher, she had a prolonged period of time as a marketer at Arnold Clark, right? Yeah. So we used to get a discount. So we would be like, right, car renewal time. We went to the same guy every time. Yeah. We would walk in and we would go just before we start. My wife works at head office. Yeah. We're due a discount. We are going to buy a car for here. Yeah. So you don't need to start all your bullshit. You don't need to be ramming additional products down our throat because we know what they all do. They would still do it. Yeah. I'd leave and I'd be like, I'm still pissed off with him because I feel like he's trying to ram something down my throat that I 100%. Don't want.
And I used to do the same thing. I always remember going to a car garage in Glasgow, and once again I won't tell you which one it was. And I used to do exactly the same thing. I was like, look, at that time, as a sales director of business, I had 35, 45 sales guys working for me. And I literally would walk in and say, look, I'm here to buy a car, but just to put you in a picture, I'm a sales director, I train sales, and I manage salespeople. So don't do any of your salesy stuff to me. And they would. And you'd sit there. And my wife used to literally keep tugging my shirt and say, shut up. Because I would literally turn around and say, will you stop doing it? Please. You don't need to use these transparent, techniques like, he would come across and he would ask me about a car and ask me my viewpoint on it. And I was like, well, it's a bit more than I wanted to spend. And he would instantly be like, oh, I tell you what, would you be in a position to order today? And, blah, blah. Let me go and ask my manager if he'll have a discount. And I was like, stop it. Just bloody stop it. Do you know what I mean? I can see what you're doing. But they just continue doing it, which is fine. It exists and in some areas they need to do that. But I think the world has become very acutely aware of that hard sell. And everybody can now see it. So I think business needs to evolve to make sales more than that. And that kind of, I suppose, leads on to what we do in Sales Geek, but, it's exactly what we view.
All right, mate, nice one. Well, we've unpicked a few interesting topics there. So you've done 12 years in the end at Marshalls. What was next after Marshalls?
Although my accent doesn't tell you, we are basically Scottish, so we were living in Manchester, we were starting to think about kids, and we wanted to move north to have Scottish kids. So we had the opportunity by my wife of practice, we moved north. I still worked for Marshalls for about a year, but it was very acutely aware that I had done a very bad thing for my career to move further away from their HQ, to the point of, I remember being introduced to shareholders at one point as the only director that's still in the business that's moved away from HQ. And I was like, my day's numbered here. And to be frank, it kind of comes on to where we were with Sales Geek. I tried to get a job in Scotland getting paid the same amount of money as I did in England and couldn't get it. Just didn't exist. then a job came along that gave me a salary that was close to it. For every single ounce of me that was saying this doesn't feel right, I was blinded by the fact of I can work 9 to 5 and earn the similar sort of money that I do in England, but live in Scotland. I'll take that. And I did. And yeah, it didn't work out the way it was, but I was there for 6 years. My wife will testament to this, that I'm pretty stubborn. And if I decide I want to do something, change something, I'll try my best to do it. Also, COVID was chucked in there. So I did that with the view of doing a management buyout. Decided that after COVID and after getting shares, about 2 months after getting shares, decided this was definitely the wrong place for me, that I couldn't change it. And I kind of felt every time I got a bit deeper into it, I would have more power, so I could change it, but I couldn't. Daughter was born, and then a bit of madness just turned around and said, you know, I'd been approached by Sales Geek to be the first geek in Scotland. They talked about all the things that we talked about, the mission about changing perception of sales and doing sales ethically. And even in that sales director position, at that point I was 45, 47, something like that. And I was just getting comfortable to be talking about myself as a salesperson. And I was like, sod it, I'll do it.
And before you expand on that, right, that's a trap a lot of people fall into, right? It's that, not just the comfort zone and the financial package and stuff like that, but you pick something that you say that, you know, it nearly met my salary expectations, but my environment was different. It was a different place, and I was happy to kind of compensate, you know, for that, to do that. But so many people I find just fall into that trap, and once they're properly in that trap, they sometimes just don't have the courage to actually break out and say, I'm going to do something quite different here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very honest about my Sales Geek journey, and, you know, my wife has a good job and a good business, so we were never destitute, but I was always that person, I had a bit of pride that I wanted to be the money earner, the contributor to the house, effectively, and suddenly one day to suddenly realise that I wasn't going to get my salary check next month.
Yeah.
That's scary. But it's interesting because Mike, the event on Friday, mentioned it, and he was so true. Those people that try to do job and business, they don't rip the plaster off. And why would you step from a comfort zone into some world that is just, excuse my language, but just fucked up? Do you know what I mean? You wouldn't, if you talk to anybody who's going to start their own business, and you probably yourself, and you look back, and if you knew everything you did now, and you could write the pros and cons list, would you walk away from this full-time job to do it again? It's a difficult choice, isn't it?
It's really tough.
It's like having kids. You know, if you sit down now after having children and write the pros and cons list and put it into a list, would any rational human being ever actually do it?
No
you
comment.
Would you?
No comment.
You wouldn't, would you? But that's reality. So I think you need to jump, and it made me work. But do you know what the interesting part as well? I think in that first sort of 18 months of Sales Geek, I learned more about sales in that 18 months than I had done in the 30 years previous for that. And in my master's job, I did presentations to 300 people. You know, I was doing big presentations probably every couple of months, you know, to several hundred people, complete comfort zone. I was selling a product and service that somebody else made and somebody else delivered. Yeah, it was my business I worked for, but I didn't make the products. You know, I didn't jump in a lorry and deliver it. In Sales Geek world, I'll end up selling me, and that's difficult. Do you know what I mean? It's really
difficult, right? But I also think, so, you know, as you do, me and John, Barry last night, remotely, back at 11, you know, battering away, chatting through the WhatsApp channel, we're creating and launching a new proposition. And I just think it's stressful, right? But there is nothing for me more exciting than 2 months ago that didn't exist. Right, it didn't exist. Nobody knew anything about it. And then you do some keyboard tapping, you do some communicating, you start to pull things together, and you go, we're actually making something that didn't exist 2 months ago that we 100%. Will be able to approach people with and go, buy that, and here's the cost of it. Aye, cool. Well, you know, sign me up. I find that I get quite a thrill for that. I don't know why.
100%.
I just find that it's quite an exciting thing about business.
Totally. And I mean, in our Sales Geek world, I mean, you probably saw me in the first half of the presentations. I get quite emotional at that event. And in Sales Club, one, because it drains you. But we talk about changing the way the world perceives sales. Now, since we did our first sales club joining with Davey last July, so within 15 months, we had 200 people in the room to talk about sales. If you want to change the way the world perceives sales, that's the biggest proof and evidence that what we're doing is good. That we're actually getting people into a room to start appreciating and building sales. And the amount of people that I've spoken to through that sales club journey have come to me to say, I never thought I was going to say this, never thought I could be this, and I've always distanced myself from sales. But now I know what it's about. I want to do it. And there's probably about 4 people in the community now that have actually got sales jobs out of Sales Club, from being completely anti-sales to understanding what it is and doing it. So for me, that sense of enjoyment, that reward is huge. And growing your own business, being that entrepreneur, small business where you can be reactive, entrepreneurial, you can change things, you can make things instantly. There's nothing better than that.
I personally think what you guys have created is just phenomenal, and it will. I don't think there's any proper stopping that juggernaut now, because it's
apart from my sanity.
Well, you could say that, but I think what you've started is on a trajectory, and people like it, and it's a magnet, and you can see that now because people are.
100%.
So we've got to that point in the episode of risking it all. So you've risked it all. I don't know what your last salary was. I'll guess it was decent. You've thought, do you know what? I'm going to go for it. I'm going to remove that safety net of salary and benefits and car, and I'm going to try and create something for myself, right? So before we get right into the weeds of that, for anybody that's listening that doesn't know, what is Sales Geek, and why is there a need for Sales Geek in business?
So, multitude. One, our mission is to change the way the world perceives sales. Sales to me is phenomenal. It's about having a process and a structure, using questioning in an effective way, active listening to find problems that customers or prospect customers may not even know they have. They come to you with a problem, but they don't know how to resolve that. As product experts or service experts, it's our jobs to guide those customers down a journey so they get a solution that solves their problem. And that sometimes means you have to turn around and say, no, my product's not right for you, but hey, that's cool, because that creates a brand that's sustainable. So that's the fundamental parts for it. Now, what we do then breaks into multiple parts. So we basically have 3 services. We work as part-time sales directors. Lots of small businesses have fantastic ideas, fantastic customer service, but the MD, the owner, has got all those 6 hats in their heads. And quite often in that entrepreneurial world, they're people that haven't worked in a business that has a sales function, so they don't actually know what sales do, and because of that negative perception, they distance themselves from it. So our directorship is about putting process and strategy into businesses to enable them to grow. Training is really simple. It's about upskilling people, and not from a hard sell perspective, from a consultative sales process. And then last of all, which is part I actually enjoy the most, is the mentorship. It's about accountability, getting people to do things that they're uncomfortable doing, talking them through and supporting their being their mentor 1 minute, their soulmate the next minute, their biggest critic the next minute, and making people do things that they're uncomfortable with. And when you think about that negative perception of sales and small business, the biggest thing they're most uncomfortable about doing is sales. Everybody's uncomfortable with that. So for us, if we can give that top level support that has been exclusive to PLCs and big businesses to small businesses, we can help the economy grow. And that's for us. So we just try to make that affordable for anybody and accessible to everybody. And that's fundamentally, everybody says to us, why do you do Sales Club? It's free. You do 3 sales clubs a month. We do Hampden every 6 months. We train 130 people every single month free of charge. We don't make a single penny out of it. Worse than that, it costs us money to do these events. Sounds mad, doesn't it? I mean, why would you do that? But it's about changing the perception and making it accessible to everybody. Because if we can get everybody accepting sales as something that they can do positively, that helps everybody.
And working with a lot of guys in trades in particular in our business, that's why we're sat at this table, really. We've recognised that quite often the pathway that even the really successful ones will go on, if you just choose like a Sparky, for example, they become an apprentice, then they do their time, like you did, often in big corporate businesses, and they go, I could be doing this myself here, why am I getting all the money? Or, you know, so it's like start as a sole trader, all right, cool, things are going well, I'll get an apprentice, become a limited company, another one. Fast forward 3 years, they're then installing 15 grand solar systems, but they're still at heart a Sparky. They are. And you hear them saying things like, I hate selling, it's a complete necessary evil for my business, I'm all right at it, but it's just no my thing. And as you say, you know, throw into the mix, they're then having to wear the finance hat, the admin hat, the everything hat, they're doing everything. I can absolutely see how there's an appetite among a lot of them to go, actually, maybe I just need to recognise that I'm no fantastic at that thing, so I'll get a bit of training, or I'm no fantastic at that thing, I don't have the time, so let me get a part-time sales director in and we'll start taking this stuff seriously.
Or for worse for me is they don't do anything about it, and therefore they inhibit their dreams and their vision. They inhibit growth. Because there's so many good tradespeople out there, that, and you know, it's like every industry, there are bad tradesmen out there, but there are loads of exceptional people. But they all get to that glass ceiling that they start to feel that taking that next step to making the business go from 1 million to 2, or 2 to 5, or 5 to 10, that's too difficult for them to do. So they don't take that leap. And for me, if they could systemize the sales process to enable that growth from a sales perspective to be easy, then they do it, because operationally and technically they're experts. They can do that. You can give them as much work as you can give them, and they'll manage the management of doing the job, and they'll be able to interview really good Sparkies or plumbers. They'll be able to see the cowboys, you know, from a mile off, but they can't do that for the other functions.
Aye.
And that's what we want to try to do. And I was doing some work with SBN and Fraser Morrison, and he was talking about statistic, and it was something like in the Scottish government looking at something like 96%, I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but something like 96% of businesses in Scotland have under 10 employees. If they could get 5% of them to grow from under 10 employees to over 10 employees, it would do something like quadruple the GDP of the economy. I mean, the impact is huge. So you imagine how many tradespeople are out there. If we could make 100 of them grow from 1 million to 5, that's 400 million pound extra revenue for this country. That's 400. You know, the taxation, the jobs that it creates, the prosperity that it creates is huge. So I think for me, it's a mission that we all should try to get onto.
And you mentioned earlier, Peter, that Sales Geek approached you to take on, I guess it's a franchise model in Scotland. How did that come about? Had you done a bit of work with Sales Geek previously, or had you just done a bit of due diligence and research yourself?
I knew of the owner in the basis that, and I don't even think Richard knew this, but when I was at Marshall's, we wanted to do an acquisition into lighting industry, so we'd done quite a lot of deep dives into different businesses, and his name had appeared. So I'd been connected with him on LinkedIn, and I kind of saw what was going on. Then randomly, Simon, who is his business development manager, reached out to me probably about a year before I started it. And everybody always said to me, go and start your own business, do your own business, do your own business. And it goes back to my statement of, I wish I had got a trade when I was at school. Because every time I thought about what I could start my own business in, I didn't have a skill in a trade. Yeah, I wasn't a marketeer, I wasn't a joiner, I wasn't a HR person. I didn't have a skill, or I didn't think I had a skill. And then anything I did as a hobby, I didn't want to ruin by making it my job. So I was like, I want to start a business, but what is that? You know, what does that look like? So they approached me and said, Simon said to me on one call, he phoned me about 3 or 4 times, and he was badgering me a little bit, but he phoned me 3 or 4 times. He said, why didn't you sell sales? I was like, selling sales? Sales I'm good at. And, you know, there's that light bulb moment of, I can now see that. And to be frank, I still had that niggling doubt in my mind of, I don't want to leave full-time job. Yeah, I can leave. The business I was in, it was a great business. It could grow hugely, and it still could grow hugely, but it just won't because of the culture in the business. But there's a huge comfort zone of having that paycheck. You know, if I wanted to go on a holiday, I got paid. If I broke my leg, I'd get paid. If the guy wanted to get rid of me, he'd have to give me a 6 months notice period. That security blanket, it's
I
tough
always
to walk
say
away from.
giving that up when you've got big boy shit in your life is tough, i.e. mortgage, kids, house. Often a bit easier, I think, if you're young and you've not really got anything to sacrifice. It's just, right, we'll go for it, and if it does work out, I'm staying with my mum and dad anyway.
Yeah.
Whereas when you've
100%.
got that big boy shit to consider, it's no easy decision.
Yeah, and you know what? I think you look at the whole COVID thing. If there's anything that can be positive out of COVID, is that the younger generation, I think more of them are taking the opportunity than the now generations. You know, our generation was go and get a job, get a decent job, get income, get your pension going, buy a house. You know, you put your big boy pants on at the age of bloody 18, didn't you? Where now that's like that, I'll go and try something, mess about. I always remember meeting a guy who came for a job in the business, and he was an engineer, and he'd qualified during COVID. And he applied for a job that was a 26 grand starting job, and he'd been running this business for 2 years under COVID, and me being a bit entrepreneurial in the interview process, tell me about this job, and he took trainers, and he put bespoke designs and custom designs on trainers. So I was talking to him, I was like, tell me about your business. So he'd agreed contracts with Nike, Adidas, and all these people to buy blank trainers. So he'd gone out and reached out to these guys and agreed supply chain agreements with some of the biggest brands in the world. And he's buying these blank trainers, then he was getting people on his website to create their own designs, and he would effectively print the trainer with the design. Yeah. So he was buying trainers at 80 quid and he was selling them at 180 quid, and he reckoned it cost him 20 quid a trainer to print them. Big profit. I said, so how many are you doing? He's like, I'm doing maybe about 50 to 100. I said, what, a year? And he's like, no, a week. I was like, what the hell are you doing sitting this? Go and, I literally said to him, I'll tell you what, you have my job and give me your business. Because I would love to be in charge. He was making 4 or 5 grand a week profit. Bonkers. But COVID forced those guys, because there wasn't an opportunity to go and get a job and go and work in an office to go and earn money. So if there's any positives from COVID, I think that younger generation are a bit more entrepreneurial than we are. So I think there's some real positives.
Most of the, even within our own team at Jolly Media Marketing, side hustle is the term that's used now, is pretty common practice. Some business owners, I think, get a bit nervous when they know that their team members are side hustling, but I mean, it might vary from sector to sector. For ours, it just comes with the territory. As long as you know about it and it's not competing with anything that you do, what's the issue, right?
Yeah, but I think you look at the skills you're trying to recruit into the business, and the amount of business owners that I speak to who get really frustrated that the people they employ, they feel don't have the skills they would want, and they talk through the skills they want their employees to have, and you're like, all the skills you're talking about, the skills that you have. That's why you're a business owner. And the reason why they're employees is because they don't have those skills. So for me, if you can employ people into your business, even on a part-time basis, that have those skills, then do it. Because if they can grow their own businesses and they can flourish and they can be entrepreneurial and make cash and do all that sort of stuff, even if you get them in your business for a day a week, it's better than having somebody 5 days a week who can't do that stuff, isn't it? So embrace it.
I also quite like, for me, it speaks to somebody that has a bit of a growth mindset.
Totally.
When they're doing something like that in their spare time, rather than just squandering time and doing fuck all, watching Netflix, and somebody that's choosing to learn and work on something and build something in their spare time.
100%.
I want somebody like that in my team. Do you know?
I think the younger generation as well, it's very, very open now as well. Certainly since COVID and maybe before that, just with social media and the ability to pick a product up, like you just talked about there, pick a product up and make it and then sell it. It becomes easier for the younger generation to actually get into that and see it on the socials and see how they could do it, because their interests, or whether that be fashion or a product or a service or whatever, it just enables them a wee bit. It makes them easier to get into the business if they want to. And they can see other people doing it and being really successful really quickly. So, a lot of that kind of learning stuff that we've maybe, certainly I've had to go through the early days sales training and maybe college and stuff like that to actually get that. A lot of the younger generation just have it on tap now.
Yeah, I think, and also the dynamic, because one, the way kids learn, I would say when I started my sales career, if I wanted to upskill myself, and generally that happened because I'd meet another guy in the pub You stand up a beer, and you're like, an older guy in the team, and you'd be like, I'm struggling with this. And he's, I know a really good book. Now, dyslexics I don't particularly read. But I'd meet him like on a Friday night. He'd say, go buy this book. It would take me 2-3 weeks to go and buy the book, because I'd need to drive down to Waterstones or whatever else and buy the damn thing. Then I'd need to dedicate time to actually read it. Now, because I'm dyslexic, it would take me several months, no matter how big the book was. So it would take me like a 4 or 5 month period to do that learning. Now, in that process, I've learned one person's view. And because it's taken me so long to absorb it, I'm taking 5% of what he's learned.
Yeah.
Now, I can jump on YouTube and I can get 5 industry experts to tell me exactly how to do what I do in the space of a day. So that speed of knowledge is huge. But also from growing a business perspective, you can create social proof. You can see what the market looks like. You can see what other products. You can market research, especially with AI now. You can get AI to do market research in an entire industry in the space of an afternoon. In my day, back in 1990, whenever it was when I started in sales, I keep saying, I had a bag of coins, a box of yellow pages, a box of A to Zs, and a car. That was my tools. If I wanted to
yellow
use
pages,
it's true, wasn't it? If I wanted to use the computer, I used to have to book time in the office diary to use the company's computer. Do you know what I mean? If I wanted to check where all my messages were, I would have to stop at a pay box and phone the office. I'd literally have to stand next to the motorway in the red box, slot coins in, try to speak. That's what life was like. And it's only, 33 years ago or something we lived in that. Now, if I wanted to start a new product then, and I wanted to speak to a supplier in China and an engineer in London, you just physically couldn't do it because it was, you're faxing things to each other. And it was so archaic. Now,
easy.
It's easy. The challenge is different because in those days it was about getting the opportunities and making a relationship and building and finding the opportunity of a challenge. Today, the challenge is I strongly believe that opportunities is in abundance.
Aye.
The challenge is now is trying to work out what opportunities you should go after and where you put your resource, because if you don't, you'll waste a lot of time. I mean, when you and I first met, I can remember sitting in the Village Hotel and they turned around and said that, this isn't going to be another meeting where we just talk a whole pile of good stuff and nothing ever happens from it. Let's make sure we just get this shit done.
Aye.
And that's the key, isn't it?
Because that was driven, Peter, by... I'm still pretty new in business. Do you know? Like, this is so it was August. This is me getting into my 4th year, right? Yep. And I felt like the first year and a half was riddled with me having weekly meetings with in inverted commas partners that ultimately just want access to your portfolio of clients, right, for their own selfish reasons. But none ever fucking happens. You sit and talk, you might follow up, and you share a couple of slides, and that's it. It's tumbleweed on both parts. Nothing ever comes of it. It's just meaningless and a waste of everybody's time. So you get quite hardened to it and think, I remember sat one New Year thinking, all that shit for me is done. Meeting for coffee. Let's meet for coffee and talk about ideas. Fuck off. I don't want to meet you for coffee and talk about ideas. If you want to get something going, let's get something going. But don't waste my time with like nonsense, do you know? That was the primary driver.
But then I think that's interesting evolution of business, isn't it? Because when you start a business, and I did it, if anybody wanted to have a coffee with me, I would say yes. And in every single meeting I met with somebody, I would be looking for an opportunity that they could use my service because I needed paid. And I chased blind alleys and went down rabbit holes until tomorrow. But the interesting part for me is it's really interesting when you go about like coffee and not getting shit done. When I talk to our clients, I would say to them, if you have a new customer, prospect, and you sit there and say, we're professional, we're friendly, we get stuff done, our delivery of our product is really, really spot on, it's the best in the industry, your pre-sales process must reflect that. Because if you turn around and you have a nice coffee and nothing happens from it, or you say you're going to send an email and you don't, or the email that you send is 3 days late, do you know what I mean? Or you don't hear from the person for 3 weeks and then you suddenly get a phone call out of the blue. How do they believe if your pre-sales process is that ad hoc and unprofessional that your service is going to be on time? They don't. You damage it instantly.
How can you tell them to get that shit in shape if you've not got it in shape ultimately?
Exactly. And to me, that's the bit that people miss out. It's for me, that's where sales is really cool, because you don't need to be this pushy psychology-based salesperson who can twist your words and make you feel what you need to do. You just need to do the fundamentals right, which is treat people in a professional and organised manner. If you can do that and manage that in an effective way, then your brand value shoots through the roof. So when you get to that point of order, and they turn around and say, well, there's somebody else that's 5% cheaper. Cool. Have they managed this process as well as I have? Yes or no? No, they haven't. Cool. That's why you're paying 5% more. Simple.
I also think, see a point that you were raising there about how easy it is to, and you were touching on this as well, John, to A, access people, and B, create stuff for nothing, right? We live in a digitalised world. I actually think, again, you spoke about this on Friday, and even within our own business, we went full circle on this, right? Where Zoom meetings are great, like they serve a purpose, right? But see, like a perfect example, actually, the first time I met you, you've just mentioned it in the village. We could easily have went, let's just do a Zoom, right? We don't need to drive to the Village Hotel in Glasgow to meet one another. We can just jump on a Zoom call for half an hour. So why did we do it? I think it's because we've learned in time that getting your arse out there and just shaking somebody's hand and sitting down with them and meeting them when there is something meaningful to be discussed absolutely has a place. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of younger people in business in particular want to hide behind the screen, send emails, have Zoom sessions. We done that for a long time, even with our own clients, and we found that sometimes even when performance was strong, clients would churn, and you're like, why is that happening? And then when we looked at it, we went, all our clients in Scotland, they're not going anywhere. They are rock solid relationships. Why is that? It's because we go and see them and we spend time with them and we hold market reviews face to face. And since we've started doing our video shoots where you're forced to go on site and meet people, the relationships are night and day. You've only spent a day with them. It's no, you're not there for weeks, you're there for one day. But sitting with somebody like this, it just produces something that with the best will in the world, Zoom can't.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a couple of lunches last week, and they were talking about AI and introducing of AI and how that's going to change business. And I strongly believe this. Wherever we say consumers, people are what generate money, and people are what spend money. And the best way of selling to those people is to build trust and build relationships. Build about authenticity. And in actual fact, AI and social media actually makes that need for that even more important, because now everybody, you see a LinkedIn profile or you get a message and you automatically think, is that a computer? You immediately treat it with a bit of skepticism. So I want to know, frankly, maybe in the B2C world where you're buying a pair of socks, it doesn't really make much difference. But if I'm in a B2B world where I'm spending a significant amount of money off somebody, frankly, I want to know if the shit hits the fan, I can pick up the phone to anybody and say, I want to meet with you to work out how we get ourselves out of the shit, because it ain't working. So I want to know who that person is. And I want to know the values and the ethics and the morals behind what they do, because if they don't align with me, then I don't want to deal with you. Because I want to know when the shit hits the fan and that difficult decision needs to be made, that you or any supplier or anybody I speak to will base their decision on the same morals and values that I have. Because if you do that, the chances are the outcome will be what I want. How do you do that when you don't know the people? How do you do that when you don't have a relationship with them? And that's getting to know, what they drink and, what makes them fun. I mean, we always have that joke about Barry Bryan, Pete Dave, those instances, what can you say? Well, those things, it's what makes it fun. That's what builds relationships, isn't it?
Aye, absolutely.
How do you do that without it?
It's tough, and I think that in summary that holds people back, because they try and do too much of that through WhatsApp, Zoom, email, and not enough of this stuff. But I wanted to just come back to your first year in business, right? So rightly or wrongly, again, I do think there's a perception that with franchises in particular, you buy into the franchise, here's the handbook, follow the handbook, can't go wrong. The first 12 months will be a breeze. Again, I won't put words in your mouth, but talk to us a bit about how did you find that first 12 months of business? Where you sat one day and going, right, I've got a lovely jumper with a wee pair of specs on it. What do I do now? Like, how do I go about producing something that actually gets money in the door?
Really funny, because this jumper actually shows you my geek journey, because we don't... We have guidelines and we have tools that we can use, I suppose. As a franchisee, we have the option to use them or not, because ultimately what we're selling is our knowledge and our skills. So I always say, if I applied for a job as a sales director with a business and I turned up on the first day and the first thing I did was, let me have a look at my handbook, you'd get sacked instantly, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So exactly the same way as if I turn up as a part-time sales director, if I pulled up a playbook and started plugging numbers into it, I'll ruin my own credibility. But then the jumper part I'll come back to is quite interesting, because the geek world is about changing the way the world perceives sales. So they've always created this persona or this avatar of this kind of like hoodie, jeans, trainers, t-shirty, quite a funky, cool tribe of people, completely opposite of that corporate pinstripe suit, white shirt, car salesman that is a negative perception. So I've done that instantly. Now, when I started business, I became that polo shirt, hoodie, trainer wearing dude. And instantly, like I was in my corporate life, which meant I had to wear a pinstripe suit, or no, maybe not pinstripe, but I had to wear a suit. That also wasn't me. The hoodie also wasn't me. And I was dissatisfied with both. And I got about 18 months in, and when I started the business, I was desperate to make the business money. So as I said, if somebody asked me to brush the floor, I would do it, as long as they paid me enough. But I landed up with a huge amount of clients, making lots of money. Hated my clients, hated what I was doing because I wasn't bringing them real value, because I didn't value what I did myself. But also I was walking around in hoodies and all that sort of stuff, which didn't feel me either. So it felt like a big game. And I was offered a job to go back into corporate life. Couldn't sign the contract. Over Christmas, decided I wasn't going to do it. Stuck with Sales Geek because I knew there was something there that I could do. But the first thing I had to do is look at myself and think, I need to do something that's authentically right for me. That's the first thing I went to do, was change my clothes. Whether I like it or not, I'm that, privately educated, slightly preppy. Some people would say slightly posh, other people wouldn't. But, that's who I am. And to me, that's what geeks are proud of, is finding your identity, no matter how different it is to other people, and being happy with your own skin. So for me, I didn't need to be a geek that wore hoodies. I just needed to be a geek that was me. And as soon as I did that and I started valuing what I did and started getting to clients that appreciated me and liked me, suddenly my value of my clients shot through the roof. I remember having a meeting with a client who turned around to me and said, look, we give you so much time. We expect so much time. We know it's ruining your business. So what we're going to do is we're going to renew your contract and we're going to extend your contract. And we're going to do two things for you, because we know you're going to say no, because by extending the contract, it's going to ruin your business. And I'm sitting there going, client extending my contract, it's going to ruin my business. Fuck me. I said, so we're going to do two things. We're going to up your fee by 30%. Wait a second, a customer upping my fee by 30%? And he said, yeah, so that's the first thing we're going to do. But we realised money's not the only thing that's going to ruin your business. It's the amount of time you spend in our business. So I'm also going to remove the amount of time you need to spend in my business. And I'm like, wait a second, let me put this straight. You've upped my monthly fee by 30%, and you've removed any need for me to be in your business for X amount of hours. And he was like, yeah, because what you bring is value, it's not time. And I was like, that's cool. So suddenly I was selling to customers who valued what I did. They didn't count how many hours I was in the business. And as soon as you make that transition, then you've got customers that love you. They bring value. And one of my longest serving clients I've pretty much had from day one. I actually think he may be my first client. He says quite often, he says, he needs me about and enjoys me being about so much that he would pay me before paying his mortgage.
Wow.
And you're like, if you get a client saying that to you, then you know you're doing something well, because they value you. And that's the key for me in any journey, is taking that.
And for, I guess, MD that's listening and thinking, right, I see that, I'm excited by that, this has inspired me enough to go, I'm just going to go for it here and do something on my own. How did you go about winning those first few key clients?
The ones that I enjoy or the ones that I first got?
Give us both.
The one I first got was I listened intently to what any prospect client did, and I tried my best to mold my services to give them a solution, not really thinking about whether that solution would give them value. My main focus was about getting paid, which is negative perception sales. I was that bad salesperson. I was trying to shoehorn clients into what I did. Now, and it's really interesting, for anybody who does it, if you want something from a sales pitch perspective that will completely blow your mind and completely refresh the way you sell, is when you sit in front of a prospect client, turn around to that client and say, you're not right for me. I'm saying no. The minute you do that, they start trying to convince you you're the right person. Why? Because they trust you. They trust that you will tell them the most difficult thing you can. And quite often the most difficult thing you can do is say no. But as soon as you say that, they then try to convince you you're the right person for them. It's revolutionary. So I started to stop thinking about what I did and how much money I can earn, and start thinking it's really difficult when you're in your own business perspective, because you have the pressures about your salaries and your bills and your mortgages and your own money and all the overheads that come with the business. So you always have that number in your mind of, I've got to make whatever it is, 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand this month, because if I don't take that much money in, I'm either going to eat into a overdraft, or I'm going to eat into my own savings, or I'm going to have to borrow money. That's what you have to do. So you always have that number. So it's really difficult not to do it. But you have to disjoint your business needs from your customers' business needs. And as soon as you can do that, and you start looking at their problems and how you can solve their problems, and on occasion say no, suddenly your customers fly. I can now give customers real value and justify my fee with 1 half-an-hour phone call a month, because I bring them the expertise and I resolve problems with them that they can't do themselves, rather than being the guy that would sweep the floor for as much as he could charge me for. Does that make sense?
It does. It does indeed. I think there's a key lesson there, and we've went through that with our own business over the last year. Is I think just every business does it in the beginning. Really, it's you work with whoever will pay you, because you're so paranoid about it hitting the pan, in all honesty, that you just think, who am I to say no to money? Like, it's not quite what we do, but we'll do it because he's willing to pay us. But inevitably, you just end up letting people down as well.
And you end up with dissatisfied customers.
And you do a bit of brand damage, and then you reflect and go, right, why is that happening? It's like, well, we're doing shit that just isn't our thing. So let's start doing the things that, like... It
goes back to our first conversation. The one reason I liked you guys was you said something to me in that meeting was that, your competitors look at how many leads you can generate a business, which fundamentally is what you guys are paid to do. But you realise that isn't actually the pain of the customer. The customer doesn't want 100 phone calls a month saying, I want to buy your service. What they want is 10 or 20 of them to pay them and bring them money. So you understand that problem and you want to give them a solution. Now you accept that your job is to bring high quality leads into the business, but once they're in the business, how do you then make sure that customer can extract the most amount of money from those leads? And that's improved the sales process, hence why we're in conversation. But those two things linked is really important, because if they can spend whatever, 5 grand in you and 2 grand in us to take them 80 leads, it generates them 100 grand of the business. But why wouldn't they take that? Can't even think the maths. The whatever it is, 6 grand a month, double it to 12, to double the 100 to 200. Why wouldn't they? Of course they bloody would. But if they're paying 4 grand a month to get one sale at 20 grand, you'd never double that, would you?
Aye.
So it's that solution, isn't it? It's looking at the bigger solution, your customers.
I think we're kind of a wee bit similar to yourselves, although it's a different product and service. That we're blessed that we have the opportunity to speak to lots and lots of different businesses and different business sectors and business owners and directors, and we listen and get a lot of information back that we can then blend down, and then through a process which is painful because we do turn away business and we are quite selective, but you then create something that is of value. And that's kind of where we are just now. The discussions we're having last night and the ones we've had with you, it's like kind of looking at the bigger picture and then bringing someone to say, actually, we could really add more value to that particular client by assisting them in some of the processing steps that they just can't do. They don't know how to do it, or they're scared to do it.
Do you know the one thing that I find really funny, and I always take the statement of customers don't know what they don't know.
Yeah.
Anytime I sit with a prospect client, I will say, what do you want? And they'll go, growth, more revenue, more sales. Cool. What's that look like for you? And they're like, new customers. All the time, new customers. And I'm okay, so let's park the idea of new customers and let's go down to the real problem you want to solve. You don't actually want more sales, do you? You want more profit. You want more money in the bank. Now, if I could give you 5% less customers than you have now, but give you 20% more profit, would you accept that rather than me giving you 10 new customers? And like,
hell yeah.
Oh, yeah.
hell yeah, exactly.
Because
So
new customers comes with headaches as well.
Yeah.
It's not a walk in the park signing a new client.
yeah.
You know, it's like that's where the hard work is, arguably.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, so if you can squeeze more out of what's there already, you're already servicing them. You know, they're already in and set up, and the relationships there. And but that's why we've had to step into your world almost, Peter. Is we were just finding more and more often that no matter how good the marketing was, it didn't matter whether you were giving them 1 lead a week, 100 leads a week, 1,000 leads a week.
Yeah.
If there's leaky bucket there, there's leaky bucket there. It doesn't matter. The lead flow is irrelevant. If the sales process is shit, no because they don't want it to be great, they just don't have it in the locker, they don't have the time, they're trying to spin too many plates. I was finding we were spending sometimes like 40% of our week consulting with people on fixing their sales process. It's like, we're a marketing business.
Or solving a problem or a lack of satisfaction for whatever reason. And sometimes that lack of satisfaction is because you can't actually achieve what they want you to achieve. Mm-hmm. You're immediately trying to solve a problem that you can't resolve. And the amount of time that you put into that is probably 10 times more than you spend with the rest of the customers who just slip through your business like, you know, appreciate what you do. Bonkers, isn't it?
Exactly. So
I had a client, I'm conscious of getting time-wise, but I had a client that I started with a while ago. And they had not put a price increase for 5 years.
God.
And when you looked at their website, they listed all these products and services they did, but they didn't talk about why or how or any of the values behind it. They just talked about what they did. So I started speaking to them and I said, you know, when was the last time you had a price increase? You genuinely offer a service which is better than your competitors, but you haven't put a price increase up. So they sat down. Now I was advising them to put about an 8 to 9% price increase on. I'll stop the story and go, no, because as soon as I start telling you how it happened, you'll understand who it is, which I don't want to do. But they got their heads together and they decided under a moment of total madness to put a letter that put a 20% price increase out to all the customers. They had 3,000 customers. Put it out, slightly alcohol fueled, hence why I won't tell you the whole story. Sent it out to all the customers. 3,000 customers, a 20% price increase. Hadn't done it for years. Woke up in the morning and literally went, what the fuck have we done? Do you know what happened?
Probably a few had a moan, but everybody else was fine.
They lost 3% of their customers.
Aye.
Every one of those 3% were the people that didn't value what they did. They were people that complained the most, the people they spent the most time with, the people that they were unpleasant to deal with, the people who paid late. All those guys disappeared. And then they made, on average, 15% more margin, because it was a bit of a negotiation, but 15% more margin on a 90-odd% of customers they retained. Their profits jumped by, I think it was like 25% overnight. Instantly overnight. So that's 25% more cash in your bank by doing less.
Aye.
And they lost a lot of heartburn while losing some.
And suddenly your life becomes really good.
Want.
You start to deal with clients who value what you do, you have fun with, that stick with you for life, that every time a contract comes up, they're not scrolling the market for somebody who's 5% cheaper. You know what I mean? They're the customers you want. But when we start talking to prospect clients from a geek perspective, they're always like, no, leave our current clients alone, just find us more. But they're the most difficult customers to find, because there ain't a hill there with 1,000 customers sitting on the opposite side of, who are screaming out for your product and service, who aren't buying it from somebody already and aren't getting that problem solved, who are just waiting for you to pick the phone up and say, I can solve your problems, and lo and behold, they give you a service. They don't exist. But everybody tries to chase them. And they're the most difficult people to get hold of. It's bonkers.
Aye. I seen somebody a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn posting about the last week of the month. So he's in a really competitive space in solar. And like you're saying, everybody in solar's new into it. So spend more, get more leads in. It's always the focus. And the point of his post was saying that for the last week of the month, I think he's got 2 or 3 reps, said to the sales reps, forget about the new. Like, if I catch you paying too much attention to the new, I'll turn that tap off. There's hundreds of people in that pipeline that have arrived over the last however many months. They're all cold, they're all MIA, they've ghosted us. I don't want to hear it. Pick the phone up and speak to them and get final decisions made. They had like a record week, a record month as a result of that. And that's not even necessarily tapping into your existing clients. You've got existing clients, pipeline, and then you really. That's those in the murky middle that you just go, oh, we've not heard for them. They must not be interested. So, all right, have they told you that? No, pick the phone up then and try and get a final decision. Even if that final decision's no thank you, thanks a lot for your time, at least that way you know.
Yeah, it's the biggest challenge we always get from a sales perspective, and it's the flip of that bit. It's completely... We go into businesses and they say, we want you to do sales. And you think, okay, so there's a whole pile of customers who are sitting there ready to buy your product, and they're ready to buy your product. It doesn't mean they don't want your product, but they're actually ready to spend the money there and then. As in, they've got a need, they've got the cash in the bank or whatever, and they're ready to say now. Mm-hmm. So businesses think those people just exist in abundance. They don't. The one thing salespeople can't affect is time. I can't make a customer ready to engage. I can't. I can maybe accelerate it slightly. I can talk about the needs and increase the need for when they do it. But there are a whole host of customers out there that it's just the wrong time for them. That's cool. Mm-hmm. The challenge of marketing and sales is to be around those people's space as much as possible and keep contact with them. So one, you can judge when it's right, and also you're in a space when it's right and they're ready that you're there. And that's the sales marketing dream, isn't it? Is you build a brand, you build a reputation, you build that trust. So when they're ready to say, okay, I'm now ready to commit to my solar, whatever it is, I've got my bonus or whatever it might be, today's the day I'm ready to press the button, that they think of you.
Yeah.
And to me, what you're saying there is exactly that. Mm-hmm. Just because they've ghosted you in the past and just because they may not have said yes a month ago, doesn't mean they're not right to say yes today.
Aye.
It doesn't mean that.
I always think about it when like people are trying to sell to me, right? If I know it's no for us, like if I'm cast iron assured, it's just no for us, it's not a good match, I'll just tell people, listen, thanks a lot for the time, it's not for us, move on. There has been times where, in inverted commas, I'll ghost people, but it's probably just because in my head I go, I'm not quite ready to commit yet, but I don't want to say no because I might want to do it at some point. Yeah. So you end up no going back to them. The smart ones chase you and they'll nudge you and go, any thoughts, what you thinking? And then you're kind of forced to almost go, it's not for us right now, but I'm just want to have another think about it. I want to speak to John, I want to speak to Barry, we need to have a bit of time on it together, or it's maybe one for the January pile. So even, in my own space, I guess, or my own headspace, when people are trying to sell to me, that resonates with me.
And the challenge in that ghosting world is, and I've done it myself, you go with good intentions and you acquire something with good intentions, and it takes you a bit of time to sort of formulate your thoughts, and you need to go through that process of kind of percolating your thoughts to get to the point. But sometimes my priorities change, which means something else happened that has more important needs my attention, so I go to there. It doesn't mean I've lost interest in what my inquiry is about. It just means I have to park it for a period. Now, the challenge with that whole ghosting world is you get a salesperson who then becomes really pushy and is constantly in contact. You're really busy and you're looking at your phone and you've seen the phone call and you're like, I can't take that phone call just now. I need to reply to that email, but I can't reply just now, and whatever else. So you start ignoring them, not because you are ignoring them, just because you don't have time. Right. But suddenly, over a space of 3 or 4 weeks, you suddenly get into that embarrassing situation where this guy's tried to phone me 10 times, he sent me 15 emails, he sent me 5 text messages, and I've ignored every single one of them. How do I pick up that phone to a guy and say, sorry, mate, I've been a complete dick for the last 3 weeks and I've completely ignored you, but now I'm ready to pick it up? The biggest challenge is for us, and the biggest frustration is in that situation is when that situation happens, that person is so embarrassed they don't want to speak to you. So what they do is they go to your biggest competitor and go and speak to them.
Aye.
Yeah, you built a relationship with them and you can solve the problem, but because of that ghosting experience,
And the reality is, if you phone them, even if you've patched them 15 times, if you're phoning to say I'm ready to buy, it'll welcome you with open arms. There's not going to be any awkwardness.
Or sometimes you get the salesperson because they have that perception and they've created that view that you're an arsehole. So when you phone, you're like, oh, that's an arsehole, I'll just waste my time again. So they don't take you seriously.
Yeah.
And, you know, but so the whole relationship breaks down because of that lack of appreciation of each other's worlds. And we always say that with cold calling customers. Yeah. You sit there and you make a phone call to a customer, you have your laptop, you've gone for a pee, you've made yourself a coffee, you've done all that stuff, you're completely prepared to make the phone call. But the guy you're phoning, you've not sent him a smoke signal to say, in 15 minutes, I'm going to make a phone call to you. Can you get your coffee ready? Can you sit at your desk? Can you make sure it's ready? You're phoning him out of the blue, so you have no idea what's happening in that guy's world, person's world.
It's all timing, isn't it?
Yeah, and suddenly if that person then picks up the phone and they're really rude, instead of just crashed a car or you know, whatever, and they're really angry and in a really bad mood, and they pick up the phone and go, what the hell do you want? You immediately take the impression that guy's an arsehole. So every time you phone him from then on in, you have in the back of mind, oh, this guy's going to be a real arsehole, he's really angry. How do you know that? He's just having a bad day. Yeah, I mean, so that's a part for sales that I think is really cool, where you start to talk about that kind of psychology and that mindset and how that works and how you manage that to make it work for you.
You know what, it's really back to that training and that, you know, business owners who find themselves into a sales position who are not naturally sales. And they don't get that, what you've just discussed, because they're not properly experienced it. And you have to kind of subconsciously train people into that. This is the method. It's not you. It's the time, you know, and you need to kind of go on. And
that's, you know, that's 90% of our training. Because I think the thing is, that's really interesting at the moment. Everybody thinks about what we do as training sales teams. And it was really interesting. Mike Scott's, I was going to chin him for it, but I didn't. In his talk on Friday, he was talking about when he built hydrogen, he never had a sales function and he never sold and all this sort of stuff, which frankly, I need to speak to him about it. It's complete BS. Because in actual fact, what he did was he built a business that everybody in that business was a salesperson.
Yes.
Yeah. Everybody in that business was selling. He just didn't have a dedicated sales function. So for us, quite a lot of the training we do now is with engineers and other parts of the business, because those businesses or those functions need to be as good at sales as your salespeople. So whether you're a software developer or a joiner or whatever it might be, but the person's on the tools in the building doing the work, he's actually an extension of your sales team. Because he can see where the opportunities are.
They don't know, but they are.
But they are, and you know, goes back to the statement you said earlier about, you know, going visiting people. And I'm from a manufacturing background, so, you know, we're very materialistic and very physical about the things we do. But the amount of times I've spoken to a customer on the phone and said, you know, we do this, is there any of this we can offer you? And they're like, no, we don't need any of that stuff. And you're like, okay, cool. And then you turn up at the office and you walk in and you trip over a box from one of your competitors. And you're like, I thought you said you didn't buy that. Like, no, we don't. But what's it doing on your floor? Well, we only buy a few. Cool, I want that few. Do you know what I mean? But how do you see that? How do you feel that if you don't go and see them? But then I also say, you know, lots of small businesses talk about that personal touch, about we care, you know, we'll be here for you, we'll support you, we'll hold your hand through the process. Cool. So at the most critical point of securing order, the quote, you send them a quote by email. Do you care? No. Does it feel like you want the order? No. You just bung the email. How about actually turn around and say, do you know what? You're a really special customer, seeing the value of the quote, I'd much prefer to come along and have a conversation with you.
Absolutely.
Show them you actually want the work and you care about it.
Yeah.
Again, I don't mind just being, you know, candid in the hope that maybe some people can learn for this lesson, but up until probably the beginning of this year, we did no in-person selling. Everything was remote through Zoom. My mindset was just, I don't need to go anywhere. It doesn't matter if I'm having the conversation through a computer screen or in front of somebody. We then looked at that portfolio piece and went, why are our clients in Scotland rock solid? Since the turn of the year, any inquiry we get, no matter where it comes from, if I can get to them in Scotland, I'm going. I had a guy a couple of weeks ago and having a blather with him, and I said, look, why don't I come and see you in the office? And he was like, oh no, I'm in Fife. I was like, it's an hour in the car, don't sweat it. All right. And I think it's just because he was speaking to multiple agencies, that's not the done thing. I mean,
do you know what?
I'm gritting my teeth because he didn't convert. He went with a competitor in the end, right? So it's not a good example, but I know this because we track it. My conversion face to face fluctuates between 80 and 90%, and my conversion through Zoom is about 40 to 45%. So why would I not go and see you?
I had a fascinating. This podcast will go out after tomorrow, which is great because I have the follow-up call with her tomorrow, and she was at the event on Friday. But we're in a conversation actually with the double glazing business about doing some sales training, sales support for them, and speaking to the PA. Now, the PA, when she was arranging, doing a sort of brief call and arranging an appointment with the MD, she said, we've gone out to business in Manchester and a business in London, so on, so on, so on, so on. But we really want to get somebody who'll know the business. We want to create a long-term partnership. We want to build some trust and relationships. And we asked them to come to the factory a few times, and they wouldn't come. I was like, okay, cool. So she then said, okay, so we had a conversation, really keen to progress with Sales Geek. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to arrange a team call with you and the MD. And I was like, not an effing chance. I'm coming to the factory. And oh, you don't need to. No, I'm coming. Yeah, I'm not accepting the team's invite. And she said, well, why? And I said, you've just told me that one of the reasons why you didn't go with the other clients is they couldn't be asked to come and see you. From day one, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to come and see you. Not because you're telling me that's what I need to do, because that's what we do. Because I want to know whether I can help your business. And quite frankly, in our world, an MD and owner of the business can sit there and tell me they have the best culture, the best customer service, the best product, the most organized business, all that sort of stuff. They can tell me that. And I'll base my bid and my service based on that insight. Then you turn up on day one of delivering a contract and the place is a bomb site. There's no process, there's really bad culture, the customer service is shit, blah, 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 blah. If I'm going to help them as a business, I want to see all that stuff. And the only way I'm going to see all that stuff is actually to turn up and have a wander and speak to people in it. So I find it really funny, that whole psychology of what you should do and what you don't. And I strongly believe that, especially with AI and social media, there is so much worry about getting scammed, and AI or avatars and bots and all this sort of stuff. Just prove you're human.
Aye.
But it goes deeper than that. I using Sales Club, and you probably witnessed this, John. I talk a lot about accountants and lawyers who work in a practice and decide they want to leave corporate life because corporate life is too stuffy and they're too bound and they don't really solve problems. And then what they do is they create their own business and they create their own website. And that website, all it does is lists their services. Doesn't talk about them in any way. Doesn't talk about how they do it, why they did it, why they started. Doesn't talk about anything about the values or cultures. They've literally just taken this corporate stuffy templated website and copied it.
Aye.
Well, anybody can do accounts. Anybody can read a contract. What actually makes a difference is how and why you're doing that for the customer rather than what you actually do. So if you want to differentiate yourself and charge more money, build relationships around based on value and trust.
You can actually deal with objections there and then, especially when you go through a proposal.
Totally.
Because a proposal could be long and lengthy. It rarely gets read or properly understood. But if you're actually sitting with somebody and just kind of even skimming through it, the bits they don't understand, you can actually just turn the page or look at the computer in front of them and say, actually, what that means is, and they go, oh, right, okay, I thought that meant, and you've completely turned that around. And just by having that conversation, it's
completely. And you read the body language. I mean, if you look at this podcast, and it'll be really interesting to look back. But at the beginning of the part where Frank, you're asking me the boring histories of my background, I was sitting back, relaxing, sitting back here. As soon as you start talking about sales and the vision of the business and what we're trying to do in the world, I'm getting excited about it. So what do? I sit forward. I'm starting to become more engaging. If you're sitting in a room with a customer and you're talking through a quote and he goes from this position to this position, I sense whatever I've said doesn't quite resonate. Tell me why that doesn't resonate. Let's explore that a bit more because I can change it. You can't sense that on a Teams. You can sense it sitting in front of the person. And we do a really interesting game, and I can't remember what it's called, but that game, and I think it's a TV show or whatever else, but you get two people different words like death and party or death and wedding or something, and you get half the room to guess through that person describing the word but not using the word. And we use that in some of our training because it's really interesting. You have the one about death and everybody talks about sad and sorrow and upset and heartbreak and all that stuff, and you can feel the temperature in the room drop it becomes really quiet. And then you go into holiday or party or wedding, everybody starts talking about drinking and having a laugh and having a party, and you can actually feel the energy in the room rise. So if you're presenting a quote and you feel the room going down, it's generally because there's a problem. But if that customer suddenly become really excited about it and you feel the energy rise, and you've done something right. Now, you can't judge that on Teams. You just can't.
No.
Well, you need to be incredibly skilled to do it over Teams, and I'm not that skilled.
Listen, we have 5 minutes left, but I absolutely wanted to give an opportunity to, firstly, for anybody that doesn't know you, obviously you and Davey have joined forces and now created Sales Geek Scotland. What does the future look like for Sales Geek Scotland? I won't do the whole tell us what the next 5 years looks like because nobody has a clue, right? But just give us a bit of insight. What's your immediate vision for Sales Geek Scotland? What he's planning?
I mean, changing the way the world perceives sales is a part of that. So 2 parts for me is, one, if we can get consumers, customers, everybody understanding that sales is actually a job about problem solving and solving problems and embracing a positive way, I think that will help all businesses grow. Because if you send your salesperson to sell something and immediately that customer's thinking, here's a salesman, I don't trust him, that's a really bad place to start a relationship off. So for us, doing things like Hampden and Sales Club and creating that space that's safe, that people come to be able to talk about problems and solve things and collaborate without having that hard sell is the first part of that. So that's one thing we really want to drive forward, and I'm really passionate about, because I do think that if you look at Scottish business and entrepreneurs over the many, many hundreds of years, we've gone around the world growing great businesses and solving great problems because generally we're not arrogant, we're not pushy, we're probably quite introvert in some ways. We don't sell ourselves particularly well, but that's great because we go across with integrity and authority and authenticity, and we build genuine relationships with the fundamentals of sales. So that part is really important. But we're a commercial entity. We can't do tons of free stuff all day, every day, because we still need to get paid. So growing our customer base is really important. So those 2 things combined is really important. We've got some really exciting contracts coming up. We're expanding the team. I think we're now 4 in Scotland. Took over the rest of Scotland in 2 months ago. So from a business structure perspective, I would love to be in a situation in 5 years' time, to not answer your 5-year plan question with a 5-year plan. If we had 15 people who can generally be really diverse in sex, colour, race, values, morals, the whole bit, industry, experience, that we can generally sit in front of a customer and say, do you know what, if you're from a finance background or you run a ethnic magazine or whatever, we have somebody in the business that can help you. That's what I want to try to create. And if we can get to 15, 20 people across Scotland doing that, I think that'd be awesome, because generally we become a solution provider rather than trying to sell our own services. So for me, if we can grow sales clubs and Hampden, I would love for there to be 3 a year, 1 in Aberdeen, 1 in Edinburgh, 1 in Glasgow. It would be awesome. And grow that community. We've got about 1,200 businesses in Glasgow. I'd love to be a community of 10,000 in 5 years. And then our customers that pay us to enable us to give that back. And then the right sales team that we can just come and have a bit of fun and be different and have a whole pile of people not in
hoodies.
Preppy. But some in hoodies. Some of the bandanas, some God knows what, it doesn't matter. Because people are different, aren't they? We've got to fit them.
What would you say has been the biggest success then in the last maybe 12 months or so that you've seen?
It's difficult because the biggest success is we've secured some amazing contracts and we have some amazing customers and clients who really reward us, but also get the rewards from engaging with us. So they're the unseen part of the equation. And frankly, if we didn't have them, we wouldn't have a profitable business. And if we didn't have a profitable business, everything else falls to part. And that's, I think, why sales is so important. Everybody talks about this word sustainability, but the most critical part of sustainability in business is financial stability and sustainability. And if you don't make profit, you ain't going to be here. So everything else doesn't matter. So growing a successful business, taking over Scotland, I say there's 95 geeks around the world. There's 2 of us in Scotland. We've run 2 of the biggest events that Sales Geeks ever had in the entire history. And I'm not talking about by a few people. I think Hampden in June The biggest sales club before us was about 85, which we had. We doubled it, and then we put another 50 onto it again. So sales club's got to be, and Hampden's got to be something. You get your national stadium coming saying we'll give you the stadium for free to run an event, then you know you're doing something right.
And it was amazing, to be honest. I think of all weeks to have it there as well, there was just an year of, I don't know, it was just quite special to be there on Friday. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Well, listen, just before I wrap up, if folk have been listening and think, right, I need a bit of Peter and Davey in my life to help my business, where's the best place for them to find you?
So, I mean, LinkedIn's probably the default position, or Eventbrite, but follow Sales Geek Scotland. Our fellow Davey and I reach out. Our contact details, email addresses, telephone numbers, everything's on LinkedIn. So feel free to do whatever you feel comfortable. Drop us an email, DM us, phone us, text us, whatever you want to do. Primarily, we're there to help, and it doesn't mean we're going to be trying to sell you a service. We just want to help people.
All right, nice one. Well, thank you very much again for coming today. It's been brilliant to speak to you. And just congratulations, really, for everything that you've pulled off over the last wee while. You know, the future's certainly looking bright. But it's been an honour to sit and talk to you today. I've really enjoyed it, Davey. Peter, sorry.
Peter, Brian, Barry, what the hell's your name?
We'll end there. Thanks to everybody for listening and watching. As always, like Peter, give us a follow if you haven't already, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.